had everything a man could want at 35. His tech company, Vision Tech Solutions, was valued at over $2 billion. He owned 3 houses, drove a different luxury car each day of the week, and his face regularly appeared on magazine covers as one of the youngest self-made billionaires in Silicon Valley. But success came with a price that paid daily. 18-hour workdays were normal. Sleep was a luxury he could rarely afford. Stress ate at him like acid, and the only thing that helped him unwind was the expensive whiskey he kept in crystal decanters throughout his penthouse office. The drinking had started innocently enough. A glass of wine with dinner, a shot of whiskey to calm his nerves before important presentations. But gradually it became something more, something necessary, something that scared him when he was honest with himself, which wasn't often. On this particular Tuesday morning in October, arrived at his office feeling worse than usual. His head pounded from the previous night's board meeting celebration, where he had consumed far more alcohol than he remembered. His hands shook slightly as he reached for his coffee, and he noticed his assistant, watching him with concern. "Good morning, mister," said carefully. "Your first meeting isn't until 10. Would you like me to reschedule anything?" Waved her off, already reaching for the small bottle of whiskey he kept in his desk drawer. "I'm fine, just need to clear my head." His expression tightened, but she said nothing. She had worked for 3 years and had watched his drinking gradually increase. She cared about her boss, but she also knew her place. Employees didn't tell billionaire CEOs how to live their lives. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls. Managed to function as he always did, but he could feel the alcohol calling to him. By lunchtime, he had already had 2 drinks. By mid-afternoon, he had lost count. It was around 4 in the evening when Maria Santos knocked on his office door. Maria was the head of the cleaning staff, a small woman in her 50s who had emigrated from the Philippines 15 years earlier. She worked quietly and efficiently and rarely spoke to her beyond polite greetings. "Excuse me, mister," Maria said softly, holding her cleaning supplies. "I need to empty your trash and clean your bathroom." Barely looked up from his computer screen. "Fine, whatever, just make it quick." Maria began her work silently, as she always did, but today was different. Today, she had made a decision that would change everything. As she emptied the basket, she noticed the empty bottles. There were more than usual. Her heart ached as she watched this powerful man slowly destroying himself. She thought of her own brother, who had died from liver disease caused by alcoholism. She thought of her children, who had never met their uncle because addiction had taken him before they were born. Maria finished cleaning and was about to leave when she stopped at its desk. With trembling hands, she pulled out a small piece of paper and wrote something on it. She placed it carefully next to his keyboard where he couldn't miss it. "Have a good evening, mister," she said quietly and left the office. Didn't notice the note for another hour. When he finally saw it, he was reaching for another drink from the bottle he kept on his desk. The handwriting was careful and neat, clearly written by someone for whom English was not a first language. The note read, "Don't drink, leave now, your life is precious, someone cares about you. Maria." Stared at the note for a long moment. His first instinct was anger. How dare a cleaning lady tell him what to do? Who did she think she was? He was a billionaire CEO, and she was just. But as he held the note, something inside him cracked. When was the last time someone had expressed genuine care for his? When was the last time someone had looked at him and seen not his wealth or power, but simply a human being who was hurting? He thought about his ex-wife, Jennifer, who had left him 2 years earlier. She had begged him to get help for his drinking. She had cried and pleaded and threatened, but he had dismissed her concerns as nagging. He told himself she didn't understand the pressure he was under, the responsibility he carried. "You're drinking yourself to death," she had said during their last fight, "and I can't watch it anymore." He had laughed at her then, called her dramatic, told her she was being ridiculous. Now, sitting alone in his office with a note from a woman who barely knew him, felt the weight of those words. Jennifer had cared enough to fight for him. Maria, a stranger, cared enough to risk her job by speaking up. Looked at the bottle in his hand, the amber liquid that had become his constant companion, his refuge from stress and responsibility. For the first time in years, he really looked at it, not as a comfort, but as what it really was, a poison that was slowly killing him. He thought about his father, who had died of a heart attack at 52. His father had also been a workaholic, also used alcohol to cope with stress. Had sworn he would be different, but here he was, following the exact same path. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He was 35 years old at the height of his success, and he was throwing it all away one drink at a time. Worse than that, he was throwing away his life, his health, his future. Stood up abruptly, the bottle still in his hand. He walked to his office window and looked out at the city below. Thousands of people going about their evening routines. People with families waiting for them. People with hopes and dreams and reasons to take care of themselves. What did he have? Money, yes. Success, certainly. But no one was waiting for him at home. No one would mourn if he didn't make it through another night of heavy drinking. No one except, apparently, a cleaning lady named Maria who barely knew him but cared enough to write a note that might save his life. The bottle felt heavy in his hands. He looked at it again, then at Maria's note. The words seemed to glow. Your life is precious. When was the last time he had felt that way? When was the last time he had valued his own life more than his next drink? Made a decision. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was quiet and determined, the way all the best decisions are. He walked back to his desk, picked up his phone, and called his driver. James, I need you to take me home, and I need you to stop at Mary's hospital on the way. Is everything all right, sir? James asked, concerned. No, said honestly, but it's going to be. He gathered his things, leaving the bottle on his desk unopened. As he prepared to leave, he looked once more at Maria's note. This woman, who probably made in a year what he spent on wine in a month, had shown him more genuine compassion than anyone in his circle of wealthy friends and business associates. On his way out, stopped at the security desk. Is Maria Santos still in the building? The security guard checked his list. Yes, sir, she's on the 20th floor. Took the elevator up, something he had never done before. He found Maria cleaning an office at the end of the hall. She looked surprised and a little frightened to see him. Maria, he said softly, thank you for the note, for caring. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Mister, I hope you're not angry. I see you hurting. I know that hurt. I'm not angry, said. I'm grateful. You may have saved my life tonight. Where are you going? Maria asked, noticing his briefcase and coat. To get help, said simply, to start over. Maria smiled, the kind of smile that comes from deep relief and hope. That's good, mister. That's very good. As rode the elevator down to the parking garage, he thought about the strange turns life could take. A few hours ago, he had been a successful but slowly dying man, drowning his problems in alcohol. Now, because of a simple note from someone who barely knew him, he was taking the first steps toward saving his own life. The city lights blurred past the car windows as James drove toward the hospital. Held Maria's note in his hand, reading it over and over. Don't drink. Leave now. Your life is precious. Someone cares about you. He realized that for the first time in years, he truly believed those words. His life was precious. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to start treating it that way. The car pulled into the hospital parking lot and took a deep breath. This was the beginning of the hardest thing he had ever done. Harder than building $1 billion company. Harder than any business deal or corporate merger. This was the beginning of learning how to live again. As he walked through the hospital's automatic doors, thought about Maria. Tomorrow, he would find a way to thank her properly. Not with money, though he would certainly ensure her financial security, but with something more important, by proving that her words had mattered. By showing her that sometimes, one person caring enough to speak up can change everything. The admissions nurse looked up as he approached the desk. Can I help you? Took another deep breath, still holding Maria's note. Yes, he said quietly. I think I have a drinking problem and I need help. It was the first time he had ever said those words out loud. They felt strange and terrifying and somehow liberating all at once. The nurse's expression softened with understanding and compassion. You've come to the right place, she said gently. We're here to help you. As began filling out the paperwork that would start his journey to recovery, he thought about how this day had started. Just another day of meetings and stress and the slow poison of alcohol. Now it was ending with hope, with the possibility of a future he had almost thrown away. All because a cleaning lady named Maria had the courage to write a note that said what everyone else was thinking but no one else dared to say. Your life is precious, and it's not too late to save it. The first 24 hours in the hospital were the longest of his life. The detoxification process hit him harder than he had expected. His body, so accustomed to the daily flow of alcohol, rebelled against its absence. His hands shook uncontrollably. Sweat poured from his body even though he felt cold. Nausea came in waves that left him weak and gasping. But worse than the physical symptoms was the mental anguish. Without alcohol to numb his thoughts, was forced to confront the reality of what his life had become. The business deals he had made while intoxicated. The employees he had spoken to harshly while under the influence. The relationships he had damaged or destroyed entirely. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the addiction specialist assigned to his case, was a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach. She had seen many wealthy, powerful people go through what was experiencing. Success, she knew, was no protection against addiction. "The physical withdrawal will pass," Dr. Mitchell told him during their first session. "But the real work is just beginning. We need to understand why you started drinking and what you're going to do differently when you leave here." Found talking difficult at first. He had spent so many years being the person with all the answers, the man in control. Admitting weakness, admitting that he had lost control, felt foreign and uncomfortable. "I drink because of stress," he said initially. "Running a company worth $2 billion isn't easy." Dr. Mitchell nodded patiently. "Many people have stressful jobs. Not all of them develop drinking problems. What made alcohol your solution?" The question bothered more than he wanted to admit. Over the next few days, as his body slowly adjusted to functioning without alcohol, he found himself thinking about it constantly. He remembered his childhood, growing up with a father who worked constantly and a mother who felt neglected and lonely. He remembered how his father would come home exhausted and angry, reaching for a beer before he even greeted his family. He remembered promising himself he would never be like that. Yet here he was, following the exact same pattern. On his third day in the hospital, received an unexpected visitor. His assistant had come to check on him. She brought flowers and a stack of get-well cards from various employees. "How did people know where I was?" asked, surprised. Smiled gently. "You've been gone for 3 days and word gets around. People care about you, mister, more than you might think." She pulled out a card from the stack. "This one is from Maria. She wanted to make sure you got it personally." Opened the card with shaking hands. Inside, Maria had written, "Dear Mister, I am praying for you every day. You are brave for getting help. Your company needs you healthy and strong. With love, Maria Santos." Tears filled his eyes. "She's praying for me," he said quietly. "She's not the only one," said. "Half the office has been asking about you. The other half doesn't know what to think. Vision Tech stock dropped 12% when news leaked that you were in the hospital." Felt a familiar surge of panic. "I need to get back. I need to handle this." "No," said firmly. "What you need to do is get better. I've been talking to the board of directors. They're managing things fine for now. The company won't collapse because you're taking care of yourself." It was a revelation for so many years, he had convinced himself that he was indispensable, that everything depended on him, that he couldn't afford to be weak or vulnerable or human. But the company was still running. Decisions were still being made. The world had not stopped because was in a hospital bed facing his demons. Dr. Mitchell helped him understand that his need to control everything was part of what had driven him to drink in the first place. "You used alcohol to manage anxiety about things you couldn't control," she explained. "But ironically, alcohol was the one thing that ended up controlling you." The therapy sessions were grueling. Was forced to examine every aspect of his life, every decision that had led him to this point. He talked about his father's death, his mother's disappointment in him, his failed marriage to Jennifer. "Have you spoken to Jennifer since your divorce?" Dr. Mitchell asked during one session. "No," admitted. "I was too proud, too angry that she had left me." "What would you say to her now?" Thought for a long moment. "I'd tell her she was right about everything, about the drinking, about what it was doing to me. I'd apologize for not listening." "Why don't you tell her that?" The idea terrified more than any business presentation ever had. But Dr. Mitchell was right. He needed to start making amends, not just to others, but to himself. That evening, called Jennifer. His hands shook as he dialed her number and his heart pounded when she answered. Jennifer's voice was surprised and cautious. "Is everything okay?" "No," said honestly. "Nothing's okay, but I'm trying to fix it." He told her about Maria's note, about checking himself into the hospital, about the past week of withdrawal and therapy. Jennifer listened without interrupting, and when he finished, there was a long silence. "I'm proud of you," she finally said, and could hear tears in her voice. "I never thought. I hoped you would get help, but I never really believed it would happen." "I'm sorry, Jen," said, using the nickname he hadn't spoken in 2 years. "You tried to save me and I wouldn't let you. I'm sorry I chose alcohol over you, over us." Jennifer said softly, "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I couldn't watch you kill yourself. It was the hardest thing I've ever done." They talked for over an hour. Jennifer told him about her new job, about the therapy she had got to deal with the trauma of living with an alcoholic. Told her about his treatment, about the long road ahead. "I don't expect anything from you," said before they hung up. "I just needed you to know that you were right about everything." "I hope you find peace," Jennifer said. "You deserve to be happy, you deserve to be healthy." After the call, felt emotionally drained but somehow lighter. He had taken responsibility for his actions. He had acknowledged the pain he had caused. It was a beginning. The next day brought another surprise visitor. Was in the recreation room, playing chess with another patient, when Maria Santos appeared in the doorway. She was clearly nervous, clutching a small gift bag and looking uncertain. "Mister," she said quietly, "I hope it's okay that I came." Stood up immediately, nearly knocking over the chess pieces. "Maria, of course it's okay. I'm so glad you're here." Maria smiled, relaxing slightly. "I brought you something." She handed him the gift bag. "My grandmother always said this would bring good luck and strength." Inside the bag was a small wooden cross, carved by hand and worn smooth with age. "It was my grandmother's," Maria explained. "She carried it when she came to America. She said it reminded her that she was never alone, even in the darkest times." Was overwhelmed. "Maria, I can't take this. It's too precious." "Please," Maria said earnestly. "You gave me something precious, too." "What did I give you?" asked, confused. "Hope," Maria said simply. "When you came to thank me that night, when you told me you were getting help. It gave me hope. Hope that people can change. Hope that speaking up can make a difference." Learned that Maria had been working extra shifts to save money to bring her youngest daughter to America. Her daughter was 16 and still living with relatives in the Philippines. "I've been saving for 3 years," Maria told him, "but it's expensive and there's so much paperwork." Made a mental note. When he got out of the hospital, Maria's daughter would be on the next plane to America. It was the least he could do for the woman who had saved his life. As his 2-week stay in the hospital neared its end, felt like a different person. The physical craving for alcohol had mostly passed, though he knew it would always be a struggle. More importantly, he was learning to see himself differently. He wasn't just billionaire CEO. He was a human being with strengths and weaknesses, someone who had made mistakes but was capable of learning from them. Someone who needed other people, who benefited from their care and concern. Dr. Mitchell prepared him for the challenges ahead. "Going back to your old environment will be difficult," she warned. "You'll need to make significant changes to your lifestyle and your social circle." Nodded. He had already been thinking about this. The business dinners where excessive drinking was expected. The company parties where alcohol flowed freely. The stress and pressure that had driven him to drink in the first place. "I want to make Vision Tech a different kind of company," he told Dr. Mitchell. "One that values employee as much as profit, one that creates healthy work environments instead of toxic ones." "That's ambitious," Dr. Mitchell said. "It's also exactly the kind of positive change that can help support your recovery." On his last day in the hospital, received a video call from his entire executive team. Had organized it as a welcome-back surprise. Seeing all their faces, nodding the genuine relief and happiness in their expressions, realized something important. He had been so focused on being indispensable that he had forgotten the most important part of leadership, building a team that could function well together. His absence hadn't destroyed the company because he had, without realizing it, hired good people and given them the tools they needed to succeed. "We're excited to have you back, boss," said Tom, his head of engineering. "But we want you back healthy, not just back." Looked at all their faces on the screen. "I'm going to be different when I come back," he told them honestly. "I'm going to need different things from all of you. I hope you're ready for that." "We're ready," said, speaking for the group. "We've been ready for a long time." As packed his few belongings, he carefully placed Maria's grandmother's cross in his jacket pocket. He had worn it every day since she gave it to him, and it had become a tangible reminder of the kindness that had saved his life. Dr. Mitchell met with him one final time. "Remember," she said, "recovery isn't a destination, it's a daily choice. Some days will be harder than others." "What if I slip up?" asked. "What if I drink again?" "Then you get help again," Dr. Mitchell said simply. "You don't throw away all your progress because of one mistake. You learn from it and you keep moving forward." Nodded, understanding that this was just the beginning of a lifelong journey. But for the first time in years, he was looking forward to that journey instead of dreading it. As he walked out of the hospital, thought about the note that had started it all. 4 simple sentences from a woman who barely knew him but cared enough to speak up. "Don't drink. Leave now. Your life is precious. Someone cares about you." Those words had quite literally saved his life. Now it was his turn to live in a way that honored that gift, that showed Maria and Jennifer and everyone else who cared about him that their faith had not been misplaced. 6 months after leaving the hospital, stood in the conference room of Vision Tech Solutions, looking out at the faces of his employees during the company's monthly all-hands meeting. The room was packed with nearly 300 people, from junior developers to senior executives, all listening intently as he spoke about the company's new direction. "We've increased productivity by 18% this quarter," announced. But more importantly, employee satisfaction surveys show a 43% improvement in work-life balance ratings. Applause filled the room and smiled genuinely. This was the kind of success that mattered now, the kind that he could feel proud of without the need for artificial enhancement. Changes at VisionTech had been dramatic but necessary. Had instituted a policy limiting work weeks to 50 hours maximum. He had banned alcohol from all company events and replaced the traditional bar at office parties with elaborate coffee stations and smoothie bars. Most controversial of all, he had shared his story of addiction and recovery with the entire company, making it clear that seeking help for mental health or substance abuse issues would never be held against any employee. "Some of you might wonder why I'm so open about my struggles," had told them during a company-wide meeting 3 months earlier. "It's because I want you to know that success and wealth don't protect anyone from human problems. And if anyone in this room is struggling the way I was, I want you to know that getting help isn't weakness, it's courage." The response had been overwhelming. 17 employees had approached HR about getting help for various issues, from depression to gambling addiction to eating disorders. Had personally ensured that the company's health insurance covered the best possible treatment for all of them. Who had been promoted to vice president of operations, often marveled at the transformation in her boss. "He's still demanding," she told her husband over dinner one evening. "But now he's demanding about the right things. Quality of work, ethical behavior, taking care of each other. Before, he was just demanding because he was miserable and wanted everyone else to be miserable too." Had also transformed his personal life completely. His penthouse, once filled with expensive liquor and the trappings of solitary success, had been redecorated to accommodate regular gatherings of friends and family. He had started hosting weekly dinners, bringing together an eclectic mix of people from his company, his neighborhood, and his recovery group. Most surprisingly to those who knew him, had begun attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings 3 times a week. The billionaire CEO sat in folding chairs in church basements and community centers, listening to stories from people of all walks of life who shared his struggle with addiction. "Money doesn't make you special in AA," often said. "Your pain is just as real as everyone else's, and your recovery has to be earned just like everyone else's." Maria Santos had become much more than an employee too. She was now his friend, his unofficial advisor, and the person he called when he was having a particularly difficult day. True to his promise, he had brought her daughter, Isabella, to America and enrolled her in one of the best private schools in the city. But more than the financial help, he valued Maria's continued presence in his life. "She keeps me grounded," explained to Dr. Mitchell during one of their monthly sessions. "When I start getting too caught up in business success or thinking I'm more important than I am, I remember that a cleaning lady cared enough about me to risk her job. It puts everything in perspective." Maria had also her own transformation. With her daughter now in America and her financial worries eased by generosity, she had enrolled in night classes to improve her English and had started working toward a degree in social work. Her dream was to help other immigrants navigate the challenges she had faced. "Taught me something too," Maria told Isabella one evening as they walked through their new neighborhood. "He taught me that speaking up can change lives, that caring about people, even strangers, is always worth the risk." The business world had watched transformation with a mixture of skepticism and admiration. Some competitors whispered that he had gone soft, that his focus on employee welfare would eventually hurt VisionTech's competitiveness. But the company's continued growth and innovation proved them wrong. Had discovered that treating employees well didn't just make them happier. It made them more creative, more loyal, and more productive. Turnover at VisionTech dropped to nearly zero. The company began attracting top talent not just because of competitive salaries, but because of its reputation as a place where people could have both successful careers and balanced lives. "The irony," told a reporter from Fortune magazine, "is that I'm more successful now than I was when I was drinking myself to death. Turns out that being healthy and clear-headed actually helps you make better business decisions. Who would have thought?" The article, which featured on the cover with the headline, "The Sober CEO," how one man's recovery transformed an entire company, generated thousands of responses. CEOs from around the world reached out to, many admitting their own struggles with addiction and asking for advice. This led to most unexpected new venture, a nonprofit foundation dedicated to helping executives and entrepreneurs address mental health and addiction issues. The Foundation for Executive Wellness provided confidential counseling, treatment programs, and support groups specifically designed for high-achieving professionals who often felt they couldn't admit to having problems. "There's a myth that successful people should be able to handle anything," said during the Foundation's launch event. "That myth kills people. Literally, I almost let it kill me." Jennifer had slowly re-entered life, first as a friend, then as something more. She had seen the genuine changes in him, witnessed his commitment to recovery and personal growth. Their relationship was different now, built on honesty and mutual support rather than the power dynamics and emotional unavailability that had characterized their marriage. "I love this version of you," Jennifer told him one evening as they walked through Central Park. "You're still ambitious, still driven, but now you're also present. You're actually here with me instead of thinking about your next meeting or your next drink." Squeezed her hand. "I'm here because I chose to be here. That's the difference. Before, I was just going through the motions of living. Now I'm actually alive." They had in a small ceremony 6 months after his release from the hospital. The wedding was held in the community center where attended his AA meetings, and Maria had the honor of serving as best woman, a title she wore with enormous pride. The second anniversary of sobriety was approaching, and he had planned something special to mark the occasion. He was going to establish a scholarship fund at the local community college, specifically for immigrant students who wanted to pursue careers in social work or mental health counseling. The fund would be named in honor of Maria's grandmother, whose wooden cross still carried every day. But first, he had a more personal celebration planned, had invited everyone who had played a role in his recovery to a dinner at his penthouse. Maria and Isabella would be there, along with Dr. Mitchell, his AA sponsor, and several close friends from his recovery group. Jennifer was cooking. She had discovered a love of culinary arts during their separation and had become an excellent chef. As prepared for the evening, he stood in front of the mirror in his bedroom, adjusting his tie. The face looking back at him was healthier, happier, more at peace than it had been in years. There were still challenges ahead. Recovery was a daily process, and running a major corporation while maintaining sobriety required constant vigilance, but no longer felt afraid of those challenges. He reached into his pocket and pulled out Maria's grandmother's cross, running his thumb over the smooth wood as he had done countless times over the past 2 years. The inscription on the back, which Maria had translated for him, read, "God grant me the serenity to accept what I cannot change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." It was the Serenity Prayer, carved in Spanish by a woman who had never heard of Alcoholics Anonymous, but had understood its essential truth. That peace comes from accepting our limitations while taking responsibility for what we can control. Thought about that night 2 years ago when he had first read Maria's note. He remembered the fear, the shame, the overwhelming sense that his life was spiraling out of control. He remembered the physical agony of withdrawal and the emotional pain of confronting his mistakes. But he also remembered the moment when everything changed, not when he stopped drinking, but when he started truly living. When he realized that his life was precious, not because of his wealth or success, but simply because it was his life, because people cared about him, because he had the power to choose every single day how he wanted to live. The doorbell rang, interrupting his thoughts. Smiled, put the cross back in his pocket, and went to welcome his friends. His real friends, the people who had seen him at his worst and stayed with him through his best. As he opened the door to Maria and Isabella, felt the familiar surge of gratitude that had become a constant in his sober life. Not gratitude for his wealth or success, but gratitude for the simple fact that he was alive, present, and surrounded by people who cared about him. "Thank you for coming," he said, embracing them both. "Thank you for living," Maria replied, and understood that she meant more than just surviving. She meant living with purpose, with connection, with hope. The evening was perfect in its simplicity. Good food, genuine conversation, and the kind of laughter that comes from shared experiences and mutual support. Looked around the table at these people who had saved his life in different ways, and he felt something he had never experienced during his drinking years: true contentment. He wasn't content because he had achieved some final goal or solved all his problems. He was content because he was present for his own life, because he was connected to people who mattered, because every day he woke up and chose recovery over destruction. As the evening wound down and his guests prepared to leave, stood to make a toast, he raised his glass of sparkling apple cider and looked at each face around the table. "2 years ago I was dying," he said simply. "I was successful by every measure that society values, but I was dying inside and outside. Today I'm alive, not just breathing, but truly alive. And I'm alive because each of you, in your own way, showed me that my life had value even when I couldn't see it myself." He turned to Maria. "You had the courage to write a note that saved a stranger's life. You risked your job to show compassion to someone you barely knew. That kind of courage changes the world." He turned to Jennifer. "You loved me enough to leave when staying would have enabled my destruction. That took a different kind of courage, and I'm grateful for it every day." He looked at Dr. Mitchell, at all the others. "You've all taught me that recovery isn't something you do alone. It's something you do in community, with people who care about each other and are willing to speak truth even when it's difficult." Raised his glass higher. "So here's to life, to the courage to change, to the people who care enough to speak up, and to the possibility that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be." The glasses clinked together in a toast that was both celebration and commitment. A promise to keep choosing life, keep choosing health, keep choosing each other. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, sat in his living room with Jennifer, looking out at the city lights. The apartment was quiet except for the gentle hum of traffic far below. "What are you thinking about?" Jennifer asked, nodding the contemplative expression on his face. "I'm thinking about that note," said. 4 sentences that changed everything. "Don't drink, leave now, your life is precious, someone cares about you." I keep wondering how many people need to hear those words and never do. How many people are where I was, thinking they're alone, thinking no one cares. Jennifer nodded. "That's why your foundation is so important. You're making sure those words reach people who need to hear them." Pulled Maria's grandmother's cross from his pocket and held it in his palm. "I used to think success meant being powerful enough that you didn't need anyone else. Now I know that real success is being connected enough that you don't want to face life alone." He looked at Jennifer, at the woman who had loved him through his worst and chosen to love him through his best. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." "Thank you for becoming someone worthy of it," she replied, and knew she meant it as the highest compliment possible. Outside, the city continued its restless movement. Millions of people going about their lives, facing their own challenges and struggles. Somewhere among them knew there were people who were where he had been 2 years ago. People who felt trapped, hopeless, alone. But also among them were people like Maria, people with the courage to care about strangers, to speak up when they saw someone in trouble, to risk making a difference. Made a mental note to include that message in his next speech to business leaders. That sometimes the most important thing a successful person could do was pay attention to the people around them who weren't successful yet, who were struggling, who needed someone to remind them that their lives had value. As he and Jennifer prepared for bed, performed his nightly ritual. He took out Maria's grandmother's cross and placed it on his bedside table, where he would see it first thing in the morning. Then he opened the small notebook where he wrote 3 things he was grateful for each day. Tonight he wrote, "For Maria's courage to care about a stranger, for the people who love me enough to tell me the truth, for the gift of another day to choose recovery." Turned off the light and settled into bed beside his wife. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to choose health over harmful habits, connection over isolation, purpose over emptiness. But tonight, as he had every night for the past 2 years, fell asleep sober, grateful, and surrounded by love. The broken man who had once needed alcohol to face each day was gone, replaced by someone who looked forward to tomorrow and all its possibilities. And in his pocket, even as he slept, was a small wooden cross that served as a constant reminder: your life is precious. Someone cares about you. It's never too late to choose a better way. The note that had started it all was long gone, but its message had become the foundation of a completely transformed life. 4 simple sentences had saved one man, who had gone on to save his marriage, his company, and countless other people who needed to hear that same life-changing truth. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage create the biggest changes. Sometimes a note from a stranger is exactly what a dying man needs to remember how to live. The car ride back to his penthouse gave him time to think about the changes he wanted to make. Not just in his personal life, but in his company, his relationships, his entire approach to living. The recovering alcoholic was going to be very different from the billionaire CEO who had nearly drunk himself to death. And for the first time in years, that difference felt like hope instead of fear. Looked at his watch. It was 8:47 p.m. In years to come, he would remember this as the exact moment his real life began.